Hello, Edwina, welcome.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Right, so let's just sort of go, first of all, into why do people need to apply for Portuguese residence and when do they need to do it?
Well, people should apply for Portuguese residence if they intend to stay in Portugal for a prolonged period of time. Ideally, if they are intending to stay any longer than 90 days, they should be applying for residence within the 30 days following those 90 days. If it's your intention to stay in Portugal, then yes, you legally need to apply for residence.
Okay, and how long does that residence last? Is this temporary or can they apply for permanent residence?
So the initial residence application is essentially a registration as a European citizen in Portugal, and that lasts for 5 years. Okay, you would, as I say, apply for that within the 30 days following the initial 90 days in Portugal, although you could potentially apply beforehand if you wanted to, if it is your intention from the outset to stay in Portugal.
And where do they apply for residence, and how long does it take to get their residence?
So residence is applied for at the local city hall or city council of the place where you intend to take up residency. You would usually show up at the city hall nowadays with an appointment because of COVID-19, with all of the documents, and they would, in most places, issue you with the document that same day.
Right, and so is there much of a backlog of people applying as a result of COVID, or are they able to get appointments?
At the moment, you are able to get an appointment fairly quickly. Again, I believe because of COVID-19, they've had to really restructure at the local city councils in terms of appointments. And, they seem to be functioning fairly well, at least locally to me. I can't really speak for other areas in Portugal, but in the Algarve, the sense is that you're able to get an appointment fairly quickly and get this matter dealt with fairly easily.
Okay, and the requirements, are they sort of consistently applied across the country, or does it vary from town hall to town hall?
It can vary from town hall to town hall. You have your essential requirements, which are obviously showing up with your passport, a completed form, which most city councils will make available on their website, proof of address and health insurance. Although some city halls do request additional requirements, such as proof of how you intend to support yourself, for example. Ideally, what you want to do is really get in touch with someone who can assist, a lawyer, for example, to make sure that when you're making your appointment and you're showing up at that city hall for that appointment, you have everything that specific city hall is going to request.
Right, okay, and so overall, so what is the documentation that you need when you apply?
Again, you would need your valid form of ID. You would need to sign a declaration of honor that you're either employed, have a business in Portugal, or have sufficient resources to support yourself, proof of address, and health insurance.
Right, and you're saying health insurance is required, and one of the audits who is under the age of 65 asked how they obtain medical cover, and are there any special conditions required?
Legislation is always evolving in regards to this. So I would recommend that anyone who's applying for residency get in touch with a Portuguese insurance broker. And I believe that we have a speaker following myself who may be able to assist with this matter as well. So ideally, you want to speak to the insurance broker, make sure that you're obtaining a policy that is good for your personal circumstances and that also covers what current legislation is requesting.
Right. So for those who are of retirement age, they can use Form S1. Could you explain what this is and how they take one?
Yes, so the S1 form is a document that can be applied for in the UK with the National Health System in certain circumstances, which allows you to receive state health care in Portugal, which is paid by the UK. Not everyone is entitled to this, so you really want to be speaking to the NHS Overseas Healthcare Services to ensure that you meet the requirements to apply for this form. And should you meet those requirements, then this will obviously assist you in Portugal in receiving state healthcare.
Right. And I've also been asked by one of our audience whether it's possible to get a lawyer to do most of the applications for them, or do they need to go to the authorities firstly? I mean, I think in the circumstances of COVID, that's a question that comes up quite a lot.
I would recommend that you have the assistance of a lawyer to make sure that you are complying with all of the documents and requirements that are needed to apply for residency. You do, however, always have to appear in person at least once before the authorities. You must apply in person. It's not possible to apply by way of a power of attorney.
Right, okay. So if they don't speak Portuguese, is it possible to work, or is it in practical terms necessary to make sure you have a Portuguese speaker with you?
Yes, I mean, if you have a lawyer assisting you in this process, your lawyer would most definitely speak English and be able to assist with the translation. I think it's helpful to have someone who can translate, just to make sure that obviously all of the information that is going to and through from the City Council regarding this application is completely understood. You know, it's not necessary to have a Portuguese speaker, but it's definitely helpful. Depending on where you apply for the residency, so the location in Portugal, you're more likely or less likely to have English-speaking staff at the City Hall.
Right. So if, well, I would say if the UK leaves the EU, when they leave the EU, well, I mean, technically they have, but will residency still apply?
At the moment, the indication that we have is that for British citizens applying for residency in Portugal, that the requirements are to stay as is for all Europeans up until the end of the year. We've had very little guidance on what's going to happen post 31st of December 2020. So I would definitely say that if some of our audience today are thinking of coming to Portugal, this year would be better for you. You know, at least we know that it's a fairly simple process for Europeans. I'm hoping that given everything that's happened this year, and obviously with the issue of people not being able to travel out to Portugal, that there will be an extension on this deadline. But so far, we've had no indication whatsoever. We're still waiting for further information, really. Okay.
So, talking here about residents in Portugal, what about tax residents? Is that the same thing? When you become Portuguese residents, you automatically become tax residents?
Yes, yes. Once you become a resident, you have an obligation to notify the tax office of your change of address to Portugal, and therefore you become tax resident. This means that you should then declare your worldwide income in Portugal and start paying your taxes in Portugal.
And we will be going into more about the tax with Gareth Scott of Liver Franks later. So the other issue then that comes up is residence and citizenship. What's the requirements to apply for Portuguese citizenship, and what advantages does it give over permanent residence?
I mean, the main difference between residence and citizenship is that as a citizen, you can apply for a passport. You are entitled to vote in the general elections in Portugal. By obtaining the Portuguese passport, you are then entitled to travel within the Schengen area. There are many countries where you don't require a visa to travel to. Whilst as a resident, this is a status. Okay, it doesn't give you all of those rights that a citizen would get. In terms of requirements to obtain citizenship in Portugal, you need to have been legally resident in Portugal for at least 6 years, be older than 18 years of age, and know the Portuguese language sufficiently. In terms of proving that you know the Portuguese language, there are several ways you can do this, namely by way of a language test. You would apply for citizenship through your local civil registry, or you can do it by post to a relevant department. You would send a number of documents with your application, such as your birth certificate, a letter addressed to the Ministry of Justice with your complete name, date of birth, marital status, your parents' names, your profession, your address, the countries where you have been a resident prior to being resident in Portugal, a certificate to show that you've taken this language test, as well as a criminal report for each country that you have lived in from when you were 16 years of age. In terms of costs, at the moment for applying for citizenship, this has a fee of €250.
Okay. Thank you. So for those people who are perhaps thinking about a holiday home rather than living here full time, if they spend less than 6 months in Portugal a year, do they still have to become a Portuguese resident?
So you can spend up to 90 days in Portugal in each 183 days without having the obligation to become resident. If you wanted to spend more than 90 days in one go, then yes. After the 90 days, you have the obligation within the next 30 to become a resident.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Edwina, and we'll hear from you later.